Hey everyone, this is Rachel. Thanks for clicking on my video. Hey y'all, I came in today to weigh in on this Paul Mooney and Richard Pryor Jr. drama that I recently read about. So I'm pretty sure by now all of you have heard that there is an allegation by a former bodyguard of Richard Pryor that Paul Mooney either molested or had a relationship with Richard Pryor's son, Richard Pryor Jr. Now, y'all, after reading this story, I am a bit confused. I don't know if I actually believe it. And let me just tell you why. So, first of all, what this bodyguard says is that Richard Pryor had found out that Paul Mooney had some type of sexual interaction with his son. Now, let me tell you, Richard Pryor's son is gay. Now, they say that all of this occurred during the time that Richard Pryor was filming or had just gotten done filming the movie JoJo Dancer. So, y'all, JoJo Dancer was filmed, it premiered in 1986. And in 1986, I was about 20 years old. Now, they say Richard Pryor's son is 61 now. So that would make him about 7 years older than me. So if I was 20 at the time, then his son would have been 27. So he wasn't, if this happened, he wasn't a little kid, he wasn't a teenager, he was a young man. Now also, I saw a video where a reporter had seen Richard Pryor's son in New York, and he asked them about this allegation of him being molested when he was younger. Now, Richard Pryor's son did not bring up the name Paul Mooney, but he did confirm something happened to him. He never said who it was. He said something happened and it could not have been consensual because he was a teenager. Now, right along the time that this happened, one of Richard Pryor's ex-wives said on Twitter that she knows for a fact that something happened because Richard Pryor Jr. Spoke about it at a gathering that they had, and that she had it on video. Now, in her tweet, she points to Paul Mooney. So that is why, y'all, I am a little confused. Now, I'm not sure whether the person that messed with Richard Pryor's son was Paul Mooney or someone else. That's where the confusion is for me. I'm not even sure if there was something between Paul Mooney and Richard Pryor's son. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that there was. If this occurred when JoJo Dancer came out, then it sounds like that Richard Pryor Jr. was in his mid to late 20s. Now, let me just say this. Richard Pryor, even if his son was in his mid to late 20s, does or did have a right to be upset if his friend, Paul Mooney, had a relationship with his son. Now, let's just pause here for a minute, y'all, and let's talk about the relationship between Richard Pryor and Paul Mooney. They were friends, very, very good friends. Paul Mooney actually wrote a lot of Richard Pryor's early stand-up routines, or helped write. They partied together, they hung out, they were friends in real life, they were friends professionally, they had a good relationship. So if after all that, Richard Pryor finds out that his friend, his very close friend, had a relationship with his son, can you imagine if this is true, how furious that made Richard Pryor, because there has always been speculation that Paul Mooney was gay, and I've already established that Richard Pryor's son is gay. But here's the thing. I know if this is true, Richard Pryor had to be thinking, okay, my friend is gay, my son is gay, because they say that Richard Pryor's son came out to him in the 80s, let his dad know that he was gay. I think Paul Mooney is bisexual because I believe that he has children and that he's been married. But I know Richard Pryor had to be thinking, if this is true, of all the gay men in the world, why would you go have a relationship with my son? That is the betrayal, y'all. That's the betrayal. Because if you are friends with someone and you were there early in their career, you remember when they had a young, their young son, Richard Pryor Jr., and then you turn around and pursue a relationship with one of your best friend's children, that is like the ultimate betrayal. And also with that, y'all, I do not think that Richard Pryor would have ever forgiven him for doing something like that. And that leads me to believe that the person that molested his son was not was not Paul Mooney. Because during the latter part of Richard Pryor's life, he and Paul Mooney were still in contact with each other. There are pictures that you can find out here on the internet of Richard Pryor being in a wheelchair and Paul Mooney pushing him around in the wheelchair and them being at events together. If Richard Pryor had believed that Paul Mooney had had some type of relationship with his son, Richard Pryor would have never forgiven him. Not the Richard Pryor that I knew. Now, this bodyguard said that there was a hit, a $1 million hit that Richard Pryor had put out on Paul Mooney's life. Y'all, if it was true and Richard Pryor had went to those extents to get someone to basically snuff out Paul Mooney, he wouldn't have forgiven him and had Paul Mooney pushing him around in a wheelchair years later or attending events with him. That would have never happened. What I believe is this, that someone did mess with Richard Pryor's son when Richard Pryor's son was a teenager. Is that person Paul Mooney? For some reason, I don't believe that it is. I believe that, like I said, it was someone else. Now, as far as whether Paul Mooney had a relationship at any age with Richard Pryor's son, I'm a little confused on that, y'all. I'm not sure if that happened. The fact that the bodyguard brings it up in this book that he's peddling, I believe that there's a little truth in everything. Maybe Richard Pryor suspected something because he knew that his friend, his business partner, was gay, and he also knew that his son was gay. And maybe there was some interaction that Richard Pryor either witnessed or heard about or found out about that led him to believe that there was something going on between his son and Paul Mooney. And maybe that was the extent of it. Then, if that's the case, I still don't understand, if Richard Pryor suspected something like that, how he could later on in life be back friends with Paul Mooney. Because y'all, if that had been me, just say that one of my children was gay and one of my friends were gay, and I heard that my friend had had a relationship with my child, I would be fucking pissed. It doesn't matter if my child was 1 or 99 years old. The fact that my friend betrayed my trust, that's where the hurt would be for me. That's where the anger would be for me. Now, y'all, they say that Paul Mooney has, denied all allegations. His press person says that the timeline is not even jiving. Like me, Paul Mooney's press person said that if this all occurred when Richard Pryor was making JoJo Dancer or had just made JoJo Dancer, then Richard Pryor's son would have been an adult, not a teenager, an adult. Because if you Google that movie, it came out roughly around 1986. So in 1986, I, again, like I said, was about 20 years old. And I think Richard Pryor's son is about 6 or 7 years older than me. So he would have been about 26 or 27. And that timeline doesn't add up. Now, I don't know if this is a case of the bodyguard trying to, you know, sell his book and trying to create, a hubbub around his book coming out and getting people to buy it. But if it is, this is not the way. And y'all, even to when they were talking to Richard Pryor's son when he was walking down the street, I was looking at his face and his demeanor, and I felt like something did happen to him when he was younger, sexually, being molested, or him, encountering someone older who did something out of the way to him. It just showed in, the way that he spoke about it. But the fact that he did not directly point the finger at Paul Mooney made me question whether it was him. I also, when I saw Richard Pryor's son, I felt sorry for him because this bodyguard has dredged up, if this is true that his son was molested or was a young teenager and someone had a relationship with him, an adult, it dredged up painful memories for him. And for that, I felt sorry for this man, who's now has gray hair. This has to be painful for him to relive that time in his life. And also, it also brings up, you know, things with his dad, you know, and if this bodyguard is lying, why would you do this, y'all? Why would you do it? But then on the other hand, if it's the truth, why is it just now coming out? A lot of times things that are this painful, this deep, are buried for the sake of that young person. Maybe they never spoke about it because they wanted to protect um, Richard Pryor's son. Maybe they didn't want to speak of it because they knew that it was too painful. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. But for some reason, I guess I'm confused. I don't know who did what. I believe something happened to Richard Pryor's son just by his demeanor when they were speaking to him. Do I believe that it was Paul Mooney? For some reason, I do not. But on the other hand, do I believe that something happened between Paul Mooney and Richard Pryor's son at any time, at any age? On that one, I don't know, y'all. I don't know. If Paul Mooney did this, man, you are a sorry ass friend because you do not take advantage of a situation. You know, Richard Pryor's son probably was battling with his own sexuality. And if at any age you pursued a relationship with him, your best friend's son, you a dirty motherfucker. Y'all, whoo, whoo, That would be bad. Like I said, I'm confused. Let me know what y'all think. Do you believe that this actually happened? Or do you believe that it was someone else that, molested him when he was younger, and maybe later on he entered into a consensual relationship with Paul Mooney? And if that's the case, what do you think of Paul Mooney? If he betrayed Richard Pryor and had a relationship with Richard Pryor's son. Let me know down in the comments, y'all. Who, Lord, shit be too much, y'all. It be too much. Thanks for watching the video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care now. Bye-bye.